Terrific. Okay. So basically what I did was to do this training, since you were the only one who signed up for this session, was I grabbed a copy of your database so you're familiar with it when we're working in there. So if there's any site-specific questions you have, feel free to ask them, because we have a copy of your data in here that we can look at and play around with. So,
perfect. Thank you.
Is there any particular question you have starting this off before I just kind of start running through all the different functionality inside of Aloha Manager?
Well, I don't really have any questions so far because course one I'm kind of familiar with, but I was just looking to see if I had to learn something new.
Okay.
Or something I didn't know, or a shortcut, and if I have any questions, I'll ask as we go.
All right, that sounds good. So I'm going to log in here, and I'm just going to go through the basic functionality inside of Aloha here once I know how to log in. 1 second. Okay, so you're familiar with New Aloha Manager.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm going to start alongside here. This is the column where you can set it up for open tasks and favorites. So open tasks is everything that you currently have open at the time. So if you were editing a employee record or an item record, when you click on it, you'll have the option showing up here inside of open tasks. So if you want to go back to the home page or go into something else that you're working on, so I'll open both labor and items, you could jump between them by going into your open tasks here and switch back and forth.
Okay.
You also have the ability here to go into and set up favorites. Favorites is something that is specific to your login. So when you log into Aloha Manager, this is something that only you will see. And so if you were to set this up and another one of your employees were logging under their number, they're going to have a different set of favorites based off of what they put in here, or they may not see exactly what you set up inside of here. To do this, you would select the favorites option here on the bottom, and you're going to right-click in the white area in the favorites box and choose Customize. And Customize is going to give you a bunch of different options inside of here. Basically, these are the same headers you see at the top of Aloha Manager. You have functions, reports, maintenance, utilities, and user tools. I can go in here and say I'm regularly running an audit report. I can go in here and add the audit report to my favorites section and choose OK. So now every time I log in, I can just click on an option inside of here and it'll bring me right to that, so I don't have to go through the menu. So if you're constantly running the same report every day, or every day you have to do something with your employees, you can go in here, click on this favorite, and it'll bring it up for you instead of having to go through the menus.
Perfect.
Okay. Let's get into maintaining, well, let's navigate through Aloha Manager first, and then we'll get into maintaining employees, adding a new employee, and then terminating an employee, and how to manage that. The options here on the top, you have File, which gives you the options to change your password. If you wanted to change your password, you just click on this, put your old one in, and then put your new one in. Your new one is going to need to match these requirements. So uppercase, a lowercase, and a non-alphabetic character. You put that in there for the new password, save it, and now every time you log in, you'll need to put your new password in.
Okay.
You can log out, you can delete options inside of here. Most of the stuff inside of File you're not going to do much with. Most of the functionality you're going to be going through is going to be under Functions, Reports, Maintenance, and Utilities. So that's the stuff we're really going to cover on today. Functions goes into editing things that happen on the front of house on previous days. Editing a deposit, editing punches, setting up a basic labor scheduler, doing payment reconciliation reports, a little bit more in-depth stuff that we won't be touching on today that I believe is in session 2. But you can go through here and go through some of these edit punches, edit deposit options, and we'll cover those further into another training session.
What is tip share distribution?
When is tip share distribution? That may be.
Can I edit that?
I don't know that we're covering that. Let me just double check the schedule here.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's okay. I'll bring up the schedule on the website. I thought it might be session 3, but I don't even know if we have it on there.
Because we're trying to be able to edit graphs through this and change graphs, because sometimes people want a refund, and then we have to refund the graph, but there's really no way to do that, and the hotel's eating the cost.
Yeah, we are not covering. It's something that's going to be a little bit more, I'd say probably more site specific. And we are not covering that in any of the sessions, but we could do something in another session if you want, just to kind of go over it, schedule something outside of the basic training sessions.
Okay.
And cover that. So give me a little bit more detail. So let me kind of write down what you're doing, and that way I can kind of come up with some ideas of how you want to handle it.
Are you talking about the tip district?
Yeah.
Okay. So, like, let's say somebody orders room service, and then they call and they say they didn't have the room service on their room and they want a refund, and there's a grant attached to it. We need to be able to refund that grant. Because right now the hotel just refunds the whole check, and we're eating the grant, and the server's still getting the gratuity.
And is this the same day, or is this a
different day?
A different
yeah,
day.
I know we could do the same day. It's a different day, but within the same business week.
That may be something that has to be done through payroll. I don't know that Aloha is actually going to be able to handle that since it's another day. Is the guest still checked into their room at the time that you can adjust it inside of PMS?
No, because as soon as 4 o'clock in the morning hits, our system reboots, so everything is fresh.
Right, but I mean, in the hotel system, is the guest still checked into the room when this happens, or is this when they're checking out?
No, let's say they're not. Let's say they're calling, like they look at their bill when they get home. Or it has a lot to do with like credit. Well, I was just wondering if there's a way that we could go in, because I know we can change like the punches and things like that. It's just the tips we need to figure out how we can change in the system. Because every Monday I print out a tip report of the week, and then I allocate all the tips to the appropriate people.
Well, the reason I was asking about if they were still checked into the room, I was almost wondering if we did a refund to the room and did a refund of that tip. But my problem with that is if they're checked out, there's nothing to post it to.
Right, but even if they were checked in, and it's the next day, but they're still checked in, and if I go to do a refund, it just skips over the tip line.
It doesn't give you the option.
It goes from the amount. Right.
And that's something you might be able to do inside of EDC in the back office, but the problem with that is it won't affect your tip share because that information isn't brought into Aloha.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, let me ask a couple people around here. I'm thinking there may not be a way to handle that in Aloha, but let me run it past a few people here. Maybe we can come up with some ideas for you.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to move into let's go into reports first. Reports, you have Aloha Manager reports, and you have point of sale. Point of sale is basically front of house functionality. We're going to touch on a few of these reports here shortly. You can launch EDC from here, which is your credit card program. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but we will go through that as well. Maintenance is where you maintain your database. This is where you add your employees. This is where your hardware is configured. This is where licensing is configured. If we were to make any license changes, submenus, taxes, all of those things. We're going to go through a few of those today, including employees and items and submenus and menus. Utilities basically gives you the ability to back up and restore a database, which we're going to touch on, and we're also where you refresh your data to make it live in the Aloha system.
Okay.
Labor scheduler. This is more advanced labor scheduler. We will not be touching on that one. We'll be going through the basic one. It's not in today's session, but we will be touching on that at another point. Windows, what windows you currently have open, your open page, your items, your employees, the same stuff that's in your open tasks right now. Help. This is really a pretty good help file inside of Aloha if you haven't used it before. If you go into Help Topics, what this does is it brings you to an Aloha web page where you can search on a bunch of different topics that you may be looking to find out more information on. We actually use it here quite a bit in the office as well. If we come across something that might be a little bit outside the norm or something we haven't worked with before, you can go into the search feature, type in employee, and it'll bring back all the everything that includes employee records inside the system. It gives you quite a bit of information in here that you can play around with and get a little bit more familiar with, or get a quick answer to a problem you might be having.
Okay.
And that's always updated. That's hosted on the Aloha servers. NCR is constantly updating that. So if you go in there today, tomorrow's information may be a little bit different than what you used to seeing. So. Okay, so we're going to go into maintaining employees. So to maintain employees, you'll go into maintenance, labor, and employees. And this is going to bring up all your employees you currently have in the system. These are only active employees, not terminated employees. Terminated employees don't show up in here anymore. If you're familiar, I don't know if you're familiar with the older version of Aloha, it used to keep them all in the same area. Now it gets moved into another area, which we'll get into in a moment. When you want to, let me move this out of the way. If you want to add a new employee, basically the biggest requirement is giving it a unique number. Right now, these are the numbers, and I can sort them here at the top by clicking on this bar at the top. These are the numbers that are currently in use. This database, which is yours, allows both 3-digit and 4-digit employee numbers. Those are defined inside of Aloha. So if you were to try to put in, say, like a 7-digit employee number, it probably won't take it because your max is probably currently set at 4 plus your password if you were to add a password to it. So by default, when you try to add a new employee, it will automatically choose the number of the next available. So right now, if this is 101 for Brandon Sterner, the next one it's going to choose, if I were to choose new, is going to be 102. Once it selects that, I can go in and change it to whatever I want it to be. When I set up a new employee, by default, if I hit new, it's only going to set up a POS only employee. But if I pull down from this arrow here on the side, I can do a POS only, meaning they only have access to the front of house, above store only, which means they can only log into the back office. They have no functionality in the front of house whatsoever. Or POS in above store, which is probably a manager, someone that's going to be working the front of house and back office as well. And this is the one that you see mostly set up. This is going to give you all this functionality you want by choosing POS and above store. It's going to, as you can see here, set up 102 as the next number. I can, at this point, change this to whatever I want it to be, as long as it's not in use. Once I save it, I won't be able to change it. The only way to fix it is to delete it and create a new one. Social Security number. You put Social Security number in. You can also just put zeros in. It does not require you to put real numbers into the system. Requirement is a last name. You're going to want to put a first name in here as well. Middle name is an option. Nickname is if they're known by something other than their first name, or if a server doesn't want their real name to appear on a check. So you could put in here, I'll put my name in here. So now whenever a check prints out, it's going to print out as Brian, even though my first name and last name are listed as STG.
Okay.
I can select the date of birth inside of here. Export ID is if you're using a payroll system. Are you using anything like ADP or anything along those lines?
Well, we are using an ADP system. Can we make this all connect?
There is some licensing for it, yes. But what it would do is if you were to put in your ADP employee ID, which would probably be different than what you have inside of Aloha right now, you're going to put that in this export ID field. So if your ADP employee number for this employee was 1111, you put it in here. When we set up the export and you pull it into ADP, it'll recognize this employee as STG, and you could use them. You can just pull them right into your ADP payroll system.
Really?
Yep.
Okay, and we'll go over how to connect all that?
We won't go over that today because it actually requires a little bit of additional licensing, but if you wanted to go forward with it, yeah, we could set you up and get you through it. We would show you how to set up the export, and then you'd work with ADP as far as how you want to pull it into the system. I think there's a couple different ways to do it. They have a website you can pull it into, or they have their own application. So you're going to want to talk to them as well as far as what they could bring into the system. But yeah, we could definitely get this set up for you if you want me to have Tim call you about licensing it.
That would be amazing because that would make our accountant very happy.
Okay. Okay, I will let Tim know right after this call. So
Okay.
you have your address for the employee's date, postal code, email address. None of this information is required, but it's there, especially if you're using like an ADP payroll, it'll populate all the information inside of there. Prefers QWERTY
Okay.
keyboard. This is the front of house keyboard. So normally when they go in, they're going to see a keyboard just laid out A, B, C, D. This will set it up like a normal keyboard that you have at a computer with the QWERTY at the top. Check marking that box.
Okay.
We'll show that type of keyboard for the employee if they're more comfortable with that.
Okay.
Uses MadCard. This requires them to use MadCard to get in and out of the system. So I don't know if you have any employees doing that right now, but you can set up MadCard.
Well, I use it.
You use it? Okay. So this is where you set it up that you only want them to clock in and out with that. If this is flagged, they're not going to be able to use their number to get into the system. It's kind of bad in the point that if they forgot their card, you're not going to get into the system unless you turn this off. You could program the card in the back office. If you had a MagSwipe set up on the back office computer, you could swipe it right here. So that way you could pre-program them all as you add new employees. So that way if you were to set them to use MagCard only, you have a way to program it without having to go out to the point of sale. We also have the ability to do fingerprint scanners. There's a device that can be hooked up to a computer, that your point of sale systems, that they can get in with the fingerprints. Honestly, it's not the greatest thing for restaurants because there's a lot of people have grease on their fingers. It doesn't always read real well when their hands are dirty from carrying plates around and whatnot.
Okay.
Status. This is what their current status is with the system. So basically, if they're active in the system, their job status, whether the full-time, part-time, hourly, salary exempt or non-exempt, the start date, and then some basically legal information. Employee waives consent breaks and exempt from minor break rules. More just a legal thing. This is tracking that for the employee. It doesn't really affect how Aloha handles the employee from the front of house.
Okay.
Job codes. This is where you give them their different job codes. So if you have someone that's working as a manager, a bartender, and a server, you could set up all those different job codes at the front of house. So when they log into the system, it'll prompt them what job code do they want to work that day. So if I were to go in under 700, I'm going to actually clock this employee out so that way we can look at it. When they clock in, this is where we set these up. So that way if they're a manager, server, or bartender, they can select which one they want and get into it. You add it by just clicking the add button. And from the pull down list, this is all the job codes you currently have set up in your system. And I'm going to make this person a manager, and I'm going to make them a server as well. Depending on which job code they have, they may have different functionality. Obviously, a manager could do things like voids, maybe apply some promos or comps that a server might not be able to do. They may also have a bartender screen when they go into the point of sale, whereas a server was going to have a table layout or something along those lines. You could give them different access levels. So just because they are a server, they may need to have manager access level going into those key functions in the front of house to be able to make some changes like apply comp to a check or something like that. If I were to go into the working with table screen, the access levels affects what's under this key function button. So what reports they can see, what financial things they can do, different employee things like deleting a clock out, deleting a checkout. They can see that or not see that based off of what access level you give them. So I can give the manager access level, but also can give the server the manager access level. So that way their job code acts like a server, but they can get into that key functions area and do different functions that they may need to do as manager.
Okay.
This is where you assign a pay rate. A manager may have a different pay rate than a server. So whichever one they clock in as, they're going to get a different pay rate when they're working. You may want to have a bartender set up that's different from a server. Not only is the screen going to be different, but once again, they may get paid a different rate than a server would if they're clocked in as a server.
Okay.
Okay. This is for any changes to pay rates. So if I wanted to say they're getting a raise next Friday, I can set it up and put the new pay rate in here. So that way when they clock in next Friday, they'll be working at the new payroll rate. Taxes, this is once again more of a ADP record, whether they're single, married, divorced, or widow, what their marital status is for tax rate, number of dependents that they're claiming, and male or female. custom settings. These are custom codes. So if you need to keep a second email address in here for the employee, or if you want to put in a cell phone number for them, you could enter this information in here, so that way it'll show up in their record if you ever need to look it up.
Okay.
And above store settings, this is what functionality they have to get into the back office. Like I logged in with number 1 and a password. I can go in here and give this employee number 102 to log in with. It doesn't automatically pull in this number. You have to create a new one. So it could be 102, whereas I changed this to 105. It could be 999. As long as it's free, you could use it inside of here. I'll just keep it consistent. Security role, what abilities they have to do in the back office. In yours you have set up, you can give them everything. You can give them owner rights. Not really sure why you have max standard and max everything. We can go in and look at those a little bit further to see how you have them set up. You have the ability to only add items. So if this employee only needed to go in and make changes, like they add specials every day, you can select that. This is the ability they're going to be able to do when they get into the back office. And then you need to assign them a password. You can select reset password and save it first and then reset the password. No, I do not want to do that. Now I can go in here and give them a new password. Any questions about setting up a new employee?
Nope.
Okay. Terminating an employee. So now if you wanted to terminate them from the system, you can go in here. It has to be saved first. When I first set it up, I couldn't add one and make them terminated. You save it. I can now go in and terminate them. I can put a reason in here. As a matter of fact, it requires it. In this case, the reason, are they eligible for rehire? You can check mark that if they're coming back. So if you have, say, a college student or something along those lines, just leaving and they're going to come back next summer, you can make them eligible for rehire. I can go in and add new reasons by clicking on the reason button and make a new one. And this one I'll put in is left for college.
Okay, that's good to know. I just went deleting them.
Yeah, no, this way you have them still in the system so you can go back and put them back in with their same information from the last time. So if I were to save this and go back to employees, I can go in here under employment status and make them terminated, and they left for college and they're eligible for rehire. So I can go in there and do that. I can put an explanation in. Expected return date, if you know they're coming back next May, you can actually go in here and set it up for May 1st. So that way you have a record of when they might be coming back. So when you're doing your summer hiring, you can look back and say, oh, this employee is coming back next year. If they transfer to another location, you can set up a transfer in here as well, but I don't believe you have separate locations, do you?
No.
Okay. So if I were to save this, this is Brandon Sterner. I'm going to save this one. And now that it's saved, he's not listed inside here anymore. That's because the employees are now under terminated employees. So I can go in here now, and now here he is. And I can go in here and say they came back from college. I can go in, set them to active. As long as their information is the same, you can just save it. And I'm going to perform a real-time update. This basically puts the data into the system without doing a refresh. And now if I go into labor and back to employees, there he is. He's back in there as an active employee again with all the same information you had originally.
Okay, cool.
Any questions?
No.
Okay, that is going in and setting up employees, terminating them. The next section we're going to go into is actually creating new items. So I'm going to close out of the employee screens. And to get to add a new item, you're going to go into maintenance, menu items. And this works like the employees, where you can sort by name or item number or category by clicking at the top of the field here. I'm going to sort by number. Most sites, and it looks like yours has it as well, we do have headers in here that say where the range of items exists. So if I wanted to make a new salad, I know I'd need to go to the 2000s, and hopefully it was maintained that way. So when I go into here, There's the 2000, there's the salads. I can use one of the existing fields that was set up in here with nothing on it, or I can create a new one by just clicking new, and it's going to select the next available number. So even though those ones that were in there were blank, they're still taking up a number. If I hit new, it's going to create a next unused number for the item.
Okay.
Short name is the name that shows up on the button. You're limited to the number of characters you can put on it, but this is the button that's seen on the submenus and the modifier screens. So I'm going to make this one a large salad, since we're in the salads area. And normally the way I like to program, I like to save it right now, because what it'll do is, even though it's giving me the category error, it's automatically going to populate the chit name and the long name. And the chit name is what shows up on the kitchen receipt or on kitchen video if you have a kitchen video system. And the long name is what shows up on the customer's receipt. So now you can edit this a little bit further by changing the short name shows up on 2 lines inside of the submenu. Let me go into the submenu and kind of show you what I mean. So if I were to add this item, and I'll find the salads. We'll go through this a little bit further as far as how to set up menus and submenus in a minute, but I just want to show you how we add this. So let's call it under Fresh Fare. I go to Layout, and I want to add that item. What was the item number? $2041. So if I were to put item 2041 inside of here, it just puts it on a single line just like this. But if you have a smaller screen, or the word is it's a little bit longer of a word, you could put that onto 2 lines by, in the item record, putting a \n in between the words. So now when I save that, it's going to put it on, let me save that, on 2 lines like that. So that way,
cool.
So if you have any words that are getting cut off at the beginning or the end because the button's a little bit small or something like that, you could do this, put this hard return in between it on the short name, and it'll put it on 2 separate lines on the button.
Okay.
Large salad, like I said, is what's going to show up on the chit name in the kitchen. And then large salad, this is the long name that'll show up on the customer receipt. So if I wanted to put something a little more in here, so large Caesar salad, this is how it'll show up on the customer's receipt, but the buttons will remain as you had the large salad on it, and so will the chit name.
Okay.
You can put alternative names on there. Most people don't use these fields. I don't know why you would want to use that, but they do have an alternative name. A button image. If you wanted to put graphics on your buttons, you can go ahead and put a graphic on it by pulling down from this list, and these are ones that are already pre-set up inside the system. You can do an import as well. I'd recommend, if you want to do that, let's set up a separate training session, because you have to edit the image to look a certain way. So I know customers who like to import labels for their beer or their alcohol, so that way a Budweiser shows up as a Budweiser logo. It makes it a little bit easier for them to see it on the screen. We could put the button image on the button, so when your servers are looking at it, your bartenders looking at it, it's a quicker reference for them. But we can show you how to do that.
Sure.
Next important one is ask for a description. If you want to prompt for a description on the item, you could check mark this box, and every time you hit it, it's going to come up and ask you to put in a description for the item. This is good for miscellaneous keys. If you have a miscellaneous item that need to be run through the system, you could select this and have the server type it in, and it'll be whatever they name it when the system goes through with the check and the chit in the kitchen.
Well, it's different than a modifier?
This is different from a modifier, yeah. So what this is let me actually make this for you. So I'm going to choose ask for description, and I'm going to put a tax on here. Let's just go through the rest of these, and I'll save it, and I'll show you what I mean. This item, I'll make it exclusive tax, and I got it in the food category. Okay, I'll save that. And now let me go back to the button, and I'm going to put a price on this. So instead of using an item price, I'm going to put it as button price, make it $5, save it, and I'll do a quick refresh and show you what it does.
Okay. Is this rebooting my front of house right now, or just?
No, I'm actually not in your system. I'm in the lab.
Okay.
So this will reboot just
Okay.
it won't reboot it. It'll just stop the point of sale, and I'll relaunch it and show you what it does.
Okay.
Okay, that's done, and I'm going to relaunch that. And I'll just select the table, 2 guests, and that was fresh fare, I believe. So when I choose the large salad, it's now going to prompt me to put a name in for it. So if this was a miscellaneous key, if you're selling candy or gum or something that you just don't have the item in the system, you can create an open item that the server can now type in the item name. And in this case, I have a price on it, but you could also prompt it to ask for a price as well. So that way they could put a price on it as well for whatever that item might be.
Okay.
And yes, this is a little bit different. You might be thinking of this keyboard option inside the modifiers. This is just a message that sends back, whereas this actually names the item whatever you name it. So.
Okay.
Tax group, whatever tax is on the item can be taxable, non-taxable, or inclusive. Inclusive is more for borrow items. If you're doing that type of, are you doing inclusive taxes at your borrow with smart taxes?
We are doing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, inclusive.
So an inclusive tax, you'll choose that for borrow items. So that way, generally the way it's set up is if you were to select that, all alcohol or any item that is selected as inclusive tax will ring up inclusively. As soon as you put something with an exclusive tax on it, generally a food item or something along those lines, it'll move the tax from inclusive to exclusive. So you're charging now the exclusive tax on that drink, even though it was initially set up as inclusive.
Okay.
You're not doing any different concepts, so I won't touch on that. Your categories, these are important for your reports, are also important for comps and promos. Whatever category your item is in defines what it can be done, what can be done to it in the system, or how it reports. So if I wanted to create a salad report, I would have to create a salad category and put this item in it, and then report only on salads, a salad category. And it'll just show me in the, say, a product mix report, all those items that are in the salad category. Once we get into reports, I'll set one of those up and show you how that works.
Okay.
Priority separators is the ability to, on the kitchen chits, have things print in a certain order. So I can make all my appetizers print at the top of the chit, and then all my entrees in the middle, and the dessert at the bottom. So you have 255 options inside of here if you wanted to do that many priorities. But the highest, what's going to show up at the top of it, is the 1. So if I wanted to make all my appetizers, a 1, I can do that, and then make all the entrees a 50, and then all the desserts at 255. When they print to the kitchen, no matter how they're rung up in the point of sale, they're going to print back to the kitchen using that priority in the system.
Okay, so if I wanted to use this function, I just go in and label and just keep it all the same, correct?
You would set
for all my appetizers?
You would keep it the same for all your appetizers, so that way when it's rung up, it would set it like that. Once it's done, there's an option that needs to be turned on for priority separators, and I believe that's inside of Maintenance Business Store, and then I believe it's under You go in store settings, chit printing, and it's going to sort items by priority. So if this is checkmarked here, which it is in your restaurant already, it's going to print based off the priority you set it. So this part is already set up for you. All you need to do is go through and assign the number to the items.
Okay. I like that.
So that will make it a little easier for your kitchen to get their orders together. Modifier, this is where you set up your modifiers inside of Aloha. I'll go through a little bit as far as how to set up those modifier screens, but you could do up to 10 modifiers in here by pulling down from this list and assigning whatever modifier you want to that item. So in this case, I may want to add a salad, so a salad dressing. So if I were to sort by here, let's see if you have one in here.
I know I do. I think it's
maybe just dressing?
40. Yeah, it'll say just dressing.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Right.
So I could select dressing, so that way every time I hit the item, it's going to select the dressing. If this is used as a modifier, so if this item was a modifier to a main item, I can apply a surcharge to it by checkmarking this box. I could apply a price multiplier. I don't see you using it in any scenario. Some of the stuff that's inside of Aloha is meant. They write it for custom sites. So if a large chain of restaurants is looking for something specific for their menu, they may put a switch inside of here that nobody else really uses except for that chain. So there's going to be stuff inside of here that you're going to be like, this doesn't really make sense to me or doesn't apply to me. This is one of them.
Okay.
Combine price with parent item. This is one that
I would apply surcharge. Say it was a dressing and it was like blue cheese and I wanted to charge it 50 cents for that only item. That's when I would press it?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And then where do you type in how much the surcharge is?
That is under, I believe that is inside of just the pricing method. Let me just double check this. I believe it's just under the pricing method, under the default price right here.
Okay.
So if you put it on there, it's going to apply that surcharge right there, whatever price is set here.
Okay.
Back under modifiers, combine price with parent item. So if you're doing something like you're adding an upcharge on a dressing, or you're adding, if you wanted steak to the salad, selecting this box every time this item is rung up, it's going to combine the price of this as a modifier with the parent item. So if this item was steak and it was attached to the salad and the steak was a $5 upcharge to the salad and the salad's $10, it would show up as salad 15. It wouldn't break out as 10 and 5. So that way it's all combined as the main item. Highlight if modifier. If it's a modifier on a check, it's going to be highlighted on the server screen. Print independently. This will print it out as if it's, even though it's a modifier. Let's use the example where someone gets a meal and it comes with super salad. And you want the super salad to print like a main item, not as a modifier. Hitting print independently will not indent it on the chit. It'll make it like a main item on the check, even though it's really a modifier to that main item, if that makes sense to you.
Okay, it does.
Okay, default weight. Weighted modifiers. So you could make weighted modifiers. So instead of doing let me try to think of a good scenario for you. You could make a weighted modifier on an item that requires a weight of 3, meaning you have to choose a combination of items that equal 3. You could make this a 1 and another modifier on that as a 2 is the default weight. So when this was rung up, they have the option to ring this item up 3 times, or they could ring up the other item once and this one once to get a weight of 3 on the item itself. I'm trying to think of a scenario where you might do that. Maybe with a pizza where the toppings are included in the price. So you might be able to get extra cheese and pepperoni, but if you wanted mushrooms on it, mushrooms is going to make up what it would normally be as extra cheese and pepperoni. So if you had a weight on there of a 3 for the pizza with the price that it's at, you can make the mushrooms a 3, but the cheese and pepperoni 2 and a 1. So that way you can only put that many items on there before it starts charging additional. Not many people use this. I don't know if that even makes sense to you, but it's a way to make modifiers without using the required number of choices on the modifier screen. When you get into a modifier screen where you can say you can only choose up to 2 or choose up to 3, this actually puts a weight to the items so that they make up more instead of just a default. This counts as 1.
Okay, so let's say, for instance, an omelet, because they get to choose 3 things, and anything over 3 they have to pay for. Would that be a situation
Exactly, yes.
where I could use this?
Yes, it is.
And then it would just start charging automatically after 3 items?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. All right.
This is where you set up your modifiers. You can do up to 10. It's the order that it's in is how you see it on the screen when you bring up the item. So if you wanted dressings to be below something else, you'd move dressings down the screen. Pricing, you're going to use the pricing method of either item price, price level, quantity price, or ask for price. So price levels, I don't know we're going to get into price levels today, but price levels gives you the ability to put multiple prices on an item where you give a price level for happy hour versus the item, like the regular price. So that way you can go into price levels under maintenance menu, pricing and price levels. And let me create a new one because you don't have one in here. And let's call this happy hour.
So for item number, like say beer was number 500, I would put 500 in the number.
Which one are we
So
referring
it all
to?
matches? Doing the price level.
Doing the price level.
Because we do have happy hour and we do have regular prices. So we have 2 separate keys. I have 2 separate sub-menus for each. I could combine that to 1 key, and during the time slots, it would just switch over automatically.
It would change the price, but you'd have to change all the pricing on the buttons to be a price level as well, as opposed to doing the item price or the button price, which is what you might be doing now. But yes, that would work if you were to change it all out. So this is...
Okay, and we're going to go over that further later?
Yeah, there'll be another session because this is going to get into a little bit more depth than what we have in the time for today. But we can go through that in the next session.
Okay, perfect.
Let me go through the items. So this is the price level. We'll go through setting it up later. Item price is basically just the price of the item itself. Normally you would just put in the default price what you want it to be. Minimum and maximum would be applying the discount. So you can't charge more than a certain amount, but you also can't charge less than a certain amount. So that way, if you were to do this as a price level, or not price level, a button price or something like that, and your maximum price was set to $10, I can't put a price on the button in the submenu as 11. It won't let me do that. Same with the minimum. I know my costs on this are, I can't charge less than $5. I can't change it on a button level or discount it more than the price of $5, as low as I can go on it.
Okay.
Most people don't set that up. It doesn't look like you have that set up, but you can if you wish.
Okay.
So right now, I'm going to leave it as item price. Ask for price is what I talked about before in here. If I were to set this to ask for price, it's going to prompt me for the name, but then it's going to prompt me for a price as well.
Okay.
In quantity pricing is going to ask me for the quantity when I ring it up. So if I was ordering, say if I was doing chicken wings and it was $1 wings, I could put the price of $1 on here, but every time I ring up the item where it's a quantity price, it's going to ask me how many do I want to ring up. So I could do 10, 20, 30, whatever I want to put in there.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that might be helpful to you as well.
Definitely.
General settings, revenue center, revenue item, sorry, that is a item that doesn't apply towards sales. So if you were to do a banquet deposit or if you were to do a gift certificate, you might set that up as a revenue item so you could actually ring it up as whatever price you put in there or have a prompt for a price. take that deposit, take that money for the gift certificate. It doesn't reflect in your sales, but you can still take the tender and it'll show up in your payments taken.
Okay.
No gratuity means you're not putting a gratuity on there. Kind of the same idea. I would probably do that in the case where I'm taking a gift certificate. You probably not going to get gratuity on selling the gift certificates. Flagging that will do it. Guest count weight, if you're using meals or entrees to count your guests. So instead of asking for a guest count at the start of the check, I want to set up all my entrees to represent my guest count. But I might have a meal in here that is a meal that's meant for 2 people. I could change this to 2, so every time this item was rung up, it's going to count as 2 guests in my guest count.
Okay.
Are you doing any labels right now? You have a label maker or anything like that?
No labels.
Okay.
What would that be for?
Deliveries.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you're doing like a pizza, most even they don't really do it very often, but you could have a label that goes on the package itself.
Okay.
Product mix report multiplier, if you needed to count more on here on a product mix, you could change this. Normally it's set to 1. I can't even really think of a scenario where you'd want an item to count as more than 1 inside of your product mix, but if you needed to, you could change that right here.
Okay.
Video, are you doing kitchen video?
No.
Okay, this is where you set up your kitchen video for this item. So if you ever go to it, these are the settings inside of here. Auto display recipe, you can set up recipes on your item itself. So if you had a item in the kitchen you needed to get the recipe for, or more often than not, a bartender may not know how to make a drink, you could put the recipe text inside of here. And a recipe button will show up at the bottom of your screen where when you hit it, it'll print out that recipe or show it on screen depending on how you want to do it.
Okay. I like to start using that.
Yeah, it's a lot of people use it, but it's a lot to maintain as well. Some people also use it for when guests say, hey, can I get the recipe for that meal? They could print out a copy of that recipe to give to their guests as well. So you could put an image on that. You can also put a movie on there. So if you had a video showing how to prepare the item, you could link it to this. So that way, every time they hit the recipe for that item, it's going to show them a video on the screen how to prepare it.
Okay.
Printing, check printing. Print on check when the price is 0. So normally Aloha doesn't print an item on check if it doesn't charge a price on it. If you flag this, it's going to, even though it's 0 priced. Chip printing is when it's printed to the kitchen. If you want it to print to the kitchen, even though the item's on hold, you would flag that. I don't know why you'd hold it and still print it to the kitchen, but it does have the ability. Never print on chit. That is, normally I would say don't route it to the kitchen printer. But it's say if you're doing a routing by order mode so that all to-goes go to a certain kitchen printer, you can make this not print if the server gets their own salads or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Just saves paper more than anything else. Highlight if item, basically it prints it in reverse color. So being just black text or red text, it'll be highlighted around the outside while the text in the middle is white. Makes it look a little bit different on the kitchen chits. Consolidate first modifier group. So any modifiers on there, it's going to consolidate them all together. So if you have this item and you sell 2 of these and they got the same dressings on them, it's going to consolidate, saying 2 Caesar dressings or whatever that modifier may be, instead of breaking it out salad dressing, salad dressing.
Okay.
Print in bold makes the font a little bit bigger on the kitchen chit. Justification, normally it's default that it's off to the left. You could center it or have it print to the right if you wanted to change that on the kitchen chits.
Okay.
Quick count is, are you doing any type of quick count right now? Would you have that license for it in your system?
I have not used it. I have no idea.
I'll give you just kind of a brief overview of what it is. Quick count is if you needed to do a kind of a down and dirty inventory program. For example, if you know that your pizzeria and a large pizza uses 2 dough balls, but a small one might use 1 dough ball, you could set them up so that way it counts those dough balls as you make them. So every time you make a large pizza, it's going to take 2 dough balls out of inventory. If you make a small, it'll take 1 out of inventory, and then you can report on that to see what you used to replenish your products. Once you build up a history, you can go through it and set it up to give you kind of projections. So that way you know, on Super Bowl Sunday, you can go through and see I went through 500 dough balls today. That's what I got prepared for that day, something like that.
Okay.
So if you wanted to get into that, we can set you up with that, but that's what it does if you want to start tracking any type of inventory.
Okay.
Dynamic modifiers you're not using. I'll just skip over that. SKU numbers. Do you have a barcode scanner in your restaurants for
No.
pulling up checks? Okay.
No.
This is if you had a barcode scanner and you wanted to put in the barcode off of packs of gum, you could scan them into the system so that way it just rings it up without having to hit a button.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions on any of this stuff inside the items? We're going a little bit longer than normal here, but we'll move on to submenus.
No.
Okay. So submenus is what is defined on the menu. So when you set up a menu inside of Aloha, you have your main menu down the middle of the screen. Each one of these on the layout is the submenu. And submenus are defined under maintenance, menu, submenus. And to create a submenu, you simply just have to select new, and it'll do just like the items and just like the employees, create the first number or find the first number that's available, and you could put in here test submenu, whatever it is. If it's for entrees, if it's for seafood, you can put whatever your name in here. Short name, long name, doesn't really matter very much. The long name is only going to show up on, say if you were to run a report on what's on your submenus, that's what the long name shows up as. It doesn't really affect kitchen printing or customer's receipt or anything like that. Short name works like the items, that if you were to put a \n on it, it's going to put it on 2 lines on the button, so that way it doesn't cut off those edges.
Okay.
Exception modifier group. Exception modifiers are a grouping of modifiers that may be a overarching food or beverage modifier. So you may want to put every single one of your modifiers for all your food available for everything. So that way if you get like a really unique request, like somebody wants Caesar dressing on a hamburger, you can get your Caesar dressing modifier by putting it on a exception modifier screen, and they'll be able to ring that up. So let me just go into here and see if you have any set up. You have none, okay?
No, I don't.
Okay, we'll create one. So we're going to create this one, food exceptions. Yeah, I'm going to save that. Yes, I know I need items on it. And then you just go through and you select the items you want to put on there. So these are just your normal items. I'm going to go through and just grab, let's find a section in here that has your items in it, some modifiers. Cheese types. Okay, we'll do this. And I'm going to throw these in here and save this. Now I could put this on my submenu as an exception modifier group. And I'm going to save that. This will show up if I ring up an item now that this is attached to that submenu. So the way it works is, let me actually create one for real, and then you can see it a little bit better. We'll use the breakfast submenu. And I'm going to put this one on here, save it, and we'll do a refresh. So while this is refreshing, I'll just cover these next couple here. Submenu panels. Aloha Table Service sets up their panels in a default grid format. So every time you go in to create a submenu or a modifier group, they all have that same layout with the buttons across and down. Table Service now has a function that you could do something called Quick Service Panels, which is a custom panel that's linked to the submenu that will come up instead of this. So we use it a lot in concessions. So if we needed more than just the normal 20-some buttons on the screen, you can make a submenu panel that's maybe 40 or 50 buttons on the screen, a little bit smaller, but then they're just quick price points that'll show up. A little bit more difficult to maintain, but it's an option if you ever want to get into a little bit more training on that you can create a different looking panel instead of your normal submenu panel.
Okay. I'll write that down.
And let's start this up. And I'll go in, ring up this check, and if I go into breakfast and ring up one of these items, I can modify this. And now see the special button? This special will get me to those exception modifiers I created. So that way cheddar will show up on here as a modifier, even though it isn't a normal modifier to that item. So like I said, you have someone unique, someone that wants to put some type of dressing on their burger. If you were to create a exception modifier with food exceptions for every single thing that's food related in your restaurant, you can get to that even though you would normally not have that as an option with the burger or whatever choice you have on that screen.
Okay.
Layout, pretty straightforward. You select a blank area or an existing one, and you choose what you want to put there. Item button is actually an item in the database. A PLU button is a PLU lookup. So if you were to go through and back on items where we set up those SKUs, if you were to add a SKU in here with item number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay. What is it missing? Okay, there we go. So if you were to set this up as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then on your submenu screen you wanted to create a PLU number or PLU button, if you hit this, it'll prompt you to enter in a PLU or a SKU number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it'll bring up that item. So if you had a list of wines, say if you had your wines in bins as opposed to by name, and you know the bin numbers, you could put a PLU in here, assign a bin number as the SKU to the item, and now whenever you hit the PLU button on here, it'll prompt you put in the bin number and it'll ring up that wine for you if you wanted to go down that route, something along those lines.
Okay, that sounds a little complicated. But
it really isn't that bad, but it's just a lot of work to maintain. Once again, as you get more wines in, if you had bin numbers associated with them, every single time you got new ones in, you'd have to assign the bin numbers to that item as a SKU. So a little bit of work there, but it's not that complicated.
Not just for the servers to remember all the numbers.
Item button. This is just a button that when you hit it, it rings it up. This is the list of all your items in system. You select it. You could say how you want to price it. Item price is the price that's associated on the item already under pricing. The button price is a unique price that you might put on there for the button itself. So that way, if you wanted to make a submenu that was strictly for happy hour or a Friday night special or something like that, you could create a submenu and make the button price be different than the item price. So that way, whenever this screen is up, they can get a different price than they normally would. And then you save it. And price levels.
Okay, well, how do you create the time frame for that? Like, say I wanted to take my draft beer, and at 5 o'clock I wanted to make it $2 cheaper. How do I program the time slots in there?
So the way you would do that is let's kind of go through that. You would have to create a menu for that. So in this case, you have your bar menu. Let's say I wanted to change this and make this a happy hour menu. I could copy this menu, and I'm going to create this copy to the next existing that's in here. That's blank. Make it 2, and I'm going to call this HH bar menu. And I'm going to save that. And then on the sub menu, I'm going to find my beers. So you do have $5 draft beers here already. I'm going to take this sub menu and I'm going to put that on the menu I just created. So let me find the layout. I'm going to go down to the screen where the beers are. I'll just take a blank one here for now. And I'm going to put this inside of here. And I'll just pick a couple of those. So now you have your happy hour bar menu and you have your happy hour submenus on that. Now I want to assign that to display based off of a time of day. There's 2 areas you need to go into. You're going to go into event schedule and activation schedule. So I'm going to open both of those up.
Okay.
So events are actually setting them. Activation is where you set up a time that you would do it at. So let's call this a happy hour menu. So I want to do this either daily, weekly, monthly, or specific date. I'm going to do this daily. And I'm going to call this HH menu. And I'm going to unflag start of day because I don't want this to happen at the start of day. I want this to happen at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Aloha uses military time, so 4 o'clock in the afternoon would be 1600 hours. To be a little bit more specific, Aloha uses a 36-hour clock. So if you were to do something here and you wanted to have it start or end at 1 a.m., 1 a.m. is actually 2,500 hours. 2 a.m. is 2,600 hours. And it keeps counting up until 3,600 hours or until end of day runs, whichever happens first. So if you were to run your end of day at 4 a.m., that's really 2,800 hours. But then after it's done, it's now 400 hours and starts counting up again like it normally would for military time.
Okay, and now can I attach an end time?
Yeah, well,
so say I want to start at 4 but end at 7.
You create both of them. So I'm going to create both of them right now. So this is the start time for this event.
Okay.
And then I'm going to create another one that's daily. And I'm going to have this one say end at, you said 7 o'clock?
Yeah.
So that's going to be 1,900 hours. And that's going to be HH end. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my event schedule. And I'm going to create I'm going to add an event. And I'm going to set the bar menu. And the bar menu is going to be the happy hour menu. And that is going to start at HH menu. So now that you see that I have that set, it goes automatically to 1,600.
Okay.
Now I can create another one. I'm going to create another set bar menu. And this one I'm going to do HH end. And that's going to be my normal bar menu. That's going to go back to that. So now when it starts at 4 o'clock, it's going to set it to HH bar menu. At 7 o'clock, it's going to set it back to the main regular bar menu. Now, this is if you're using your bar menu as it's meant to be, so that all bartenders see only a certain menu, only servers see a certain menu. Let's just say you wanted to set this to just a terminal or to an employee. There's an option inside of here that you could set it to set menu by terminal or job code that you could do the same thing. If I were to add this one, I can go in and say, this one I want to make the HH bar menu. I want to make that start at 4 o'clock, and I only want it to show up on terminal number 5, and I want it available to all employees. Doesn't matter who they are that's ringing it up. And then I'm going to add another one then that I want to make it end. So set menu by terminal job code, and I'm going to do I'm going to do the bar menu now. I'm going to set this only for terminal 5 for all employees, but the time on that's going to be the HH end. So now with this one, it's only going to display the happy hour menu on terminal 5, but it'll be for all employees.
Okay. I'll have to play around with that a little bit.
Yeah, it takes a little getting used to, especially doing it in 2 different areas. The old version used to give you the ability to just set your times right inside of here, but now this newer version requires you to create one in here and then go into event schedules and set those up.
Okay.
So once you've created your submenus, you can assign those to the main menus themselves and make those changes as you see fit, and you change the pricing on the buttons on those submenus.
Okay.
Any questions?
Not at the moment. Probably when I start programming all this.
Sure, that's fine. Yeah, no problem at all. I know we're running a little light on time. What other things from today's session did you want to cover to make sure I get through those?
Well, what more do we have left? Do we basically do everything we were supposed to?
Everything but the reports themselves. Because we just covered
that was we were supposed to cover today?
What's that? I'm sorry, you broke up there.
Were we supposed to cover reports today?
Basic reports, so how to set them up and how to change them. So I can cover those, and then database backup, and I think we've pretty much gotten through everything we needed to get through today. So are you familiar with setting up reports or changing them?
Not really with changing them, no, but I know how to run them.
Okay. So they all pretty much set up the same way. So I'm going to kind of focus on the sales report right now, and then we're going to go into audit reports as well, because that's pretty important as part of this as well. So the sales report you can get into by point of sale, sales, and then sales summary. And when this comes up, you have all the predefined reports, and these are ones that I took from your restaurant, so that way you're familiar with them. But
Okay.
by default, it's always set to default. And the default report has these settings in it. Basically, everything that's on the left side are options that are available to put into the report. Everything in the middle column is included on the report currently. And then if you highlight these, it's going to give you a little bit more choices to choose from here. So if I were to go into sales, say I define my gross sales differently than my net sales, I can go in here, select sales, rename the header on it to gross sales, and I want to include all of this in here. But then if I wanted to create another sales one and add it by just moving that arrow and pushing it in, and then I'll move it up so they're together, I can now make this one net sales, and I only want to include taxes on that, and save it. So now my default report's a little bit differently. If I wanted to take this one and modify it to a new one, I can choose add, call it new report, and then select the default as the basis to start with. So if I were to choose default and select this, now all these settings that are in here are the ones that I just set up. There's net sales, there's sales, I think gross sales was up here at the top. Yeah. So all these settings are carried over into here, and now I can make this change for a report that I may want that's different than something that Jason or somebody else may want in the system.
Okay.
I can save that. I can delete them by highlighting the report inside of here and hitting delete. It'll get rid of it from the system. Settings, there's a ton of them in here. It's just a matter of playing around with what you want in there or don't want it in there. The important thing is to remember most of the reports, your options are on the left-hand side to add. The stuff in the middle is the stuff that's included in the report.
Okay.
I can go into comps, I could list total only, or I can list all of them with values. However I want that report to view, I can look at it. I could also remove these things. I don't want to see my deposit in here. I could highlight it, hit this arrow, and it takes it out of the included slot, so that way it's not on my report anymore.
Okay.
Once I've made all the changes I want, I can save it, and I'll view this one. Here's some sales history that's in here. Your deposits come up, so if you're taking the bank deposits, you want to put them into the system to calculate those, you could add those in this screen by hitting the add button, putting in your deposit, and put it however you want to call it, deposit 100. Okay, so now you have your deposits in here, close it. It's going to generate this report, and I can look at the report as how I want to see it. Yeah, I know you're only authorized for 5 terminals. And you could edit these reports and make some changes inside of here if you need to. So if you have any reports you're already using and you wanted to get rid of something, you could just go into it, highlight it in settings, and remove what you don't want in there. Or add as you want. Pretty much all the reports work that same way inside of Aloha Reports. So as you're going through here and you want to make changes to the labor reports, you still go into your settings and you make those changes as how you want to show it. So if I wanted to create a new labor report, I can add one, start with default one, new labor. And now I can go through and it carries those settings over from the default, and I can make any changes inside of here, save it, and now I have a new report that I want to use.
Okay.
The big different one is the audit report. The audit report is a record of everything that happened to your system for the day. It's a listing of all your credit cards that were taken, all your cash payments that were tendered, all the items that were rung up in the system, any voids, any comps, any no sales. Everything that was done within the system is recorded inside the audit report. It's only done as a date of a time, one day as a time, whereas the other reports you can use a range of dates. This you choose one particular date. And what it does is it looks at that record and says, who was working that day? I'm only going to show them as part of the record. What terminals are in there? So here, start time, end time. I want to know a report from noon until midnight of all cash payments that were taken by Andrew. If I were to select this and view it, Andrew didn't take any cash payments that day. I can go through now and select all employees and view it. Now it's going to show every single cash payment that was taken for every check in the day and who did it.
Okay.
So this is pretty good for troubleshooting. So if you had somebody that was doing a few voids more than they should be doing, or maybe put a comp or a promo you didn't want used in here, you can go through it, select the comps and promos, view it, and it's going to show you all the comps and promos that were applied for that day. We use this a lot of times as well. If a customer calls us up and says the printer wasn't working yesterday or the terminal rebooted, we can go through here and select the options for terminal up, terminal down, things like that, so that way we can see what exactly happened and get a little bit more detail as far as what was going on with the system at that time. So here you're going to see somebody applied a Make It Right buffet comp at 12:03 p.m. on the 20th. And that was Trisha did it. So you can go through here and kind of get a feel for who's applying comps when and whether they should be or not.
Okay.
So this is just a historical record of everything that was done with the system: refunds, petty cash, anything that was done, a petty cash, a no sale transaction. If you need to go back and look to see what's going on in the system that's above and beyond what a typical sales report is going to be.
Okay. I've used this before.
Have you? Okay.
Yeah.
Very, very useful reports. I'm going to go through reprints really quick as well while we're in here. Have you used the reprints before?
I have used them, yes.
Okay, so you understand how they work as far as reprinting checks or checkouts?
Yep.
Okay, good. Then the other thing is Aloha backups, backing up your database. Every single day, Aloha at end of day creates a backup of your database, and it is stored inside of the CFC backups folder. So every single night it creates one, puts it in there. So if your system were to say you were to make a change to your database, deleted a bunch of employees, a bunch of items, you didn't mean to do that, we have the ability to go in and restore that database to put you back to the way you were as of last night. So that data is still there, still available to us to be able to get to. If you wanted to manually back stuff up, so say you did a bunch of changes today and you're like, I just want to be sure that these changes are going to be saved, that I have the ability to go back to them if I need to, you can go into Utilities, Aloha Manager, and Backup Database. And you got to close out all other windows before you can do this, so let me just do that quickly. Okay, so now that those are all closed, you can go into Aloha Manager, Backup Database. You can name it whatever you want, so new changes, and it's automatically going to back up to that folder. Choose Next. It's going to go through this process of creating a backup, so that way you can always go back to this data if you needed to tomorrow or the next day or whenever you want to. You can also offload this to USB drive. If you have any type of cloud backup, that way if this drive were to ever die on your server, if you were to ever have a robbery and this machine was stolen, a fire, whatever, you could always recover that data if you were to take it off site. We do also offer services that would allow you to automatically back up your system every single night. We monitor that for you if that was something you'd be interested in as well.
Okay. I'd have to get that approved.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so this backup goes through, it creates a backup in this folder, and then you could, like I said, you could put it onto a flash drive or something like that if you wanted to.
Okay.
Any other questions? I think we've covered all the topics for today.
No, I think I'm good. That was very informative. Thank you.
I'm glad it helped, and I see you're signed up for the next class, so I will talk to you then. But before then, I will have Tim reach out to you about the ADP export, and then I'm going to talk to a couple of the people here, see if we can come up with an idea as to how to handle those gratuities for the for your system. So let me look into it a little bit further, and I'll let you know.
All right, great. I appreciate it. Thanks, Brian.
Well, thank you. I will talk to you at the next session if I don't talk to you before then, for some reason.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. Take care.
You're welcome.
Bye.